Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elias Haddad. I'm Citrix lead ShareFIle engineer for the ANZ region. Previously APJ. We've had quite a bit of demand in the local market, so I focus my role very much so on ANZ of late. I want to start off by saying it's not my fault. I almost didn't make it. My wife and I had our first child a couple of days ago, and she came a little early. So if I'm smiling awkwardly, it's just because I've been doing it for 2 days. I'm a little bit delirious. I haven't slept much. I've been sleeping on this awkward couch for the past couple of days, and I haven't had much of a chance to review this. And it is quite a detailed presentation, and it is going to take me a little while to go through it. So bear with me as I try to attack it at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So just a brief agenda. And whilst I'm doing this, I might just explain sort of background of why this was put together and how it was put together. The authentication issue comes up quite regularly, both from customers, partners alike. And I guess this presentation is a little bit for everybody. It has a little bit for the people who are looking at ShareFIle for the first time or perhaps considering a ShareFIle deployment. It also has a little bit for those of us who have a ShareFIle deployment in place already and would like to perhaps streamline the way in which authentication is done for the platform. ShareFIle is quite a simple platform to work off. There aren't too many moving parts, and as such, there aren't too many key focus areas to zoom in on. Authentication is one of them, and we'll go through that. And I'll give you a little bit of insight as to why you would do things in a particular manner as we go through. So starting off with a very brief overview for those in the room that have perhaps not worked with the platform previously. Two forms of storage you can have in ShareFIle, one of which is what we refer to as a storage zone. So a storage zone is simply a native ShareFIle storage area, and that can either live on your own storage hardware if you've got compliance requirements that mandate that you must keep your data on premise, for example. It can also live in the cloud, and that can be managed by us. By Citrix, and you purchase that in terabyte blocks, for example, or you can BYO your own cloud solution. So if you've got AWS, Azure, and you want to bring it in, very easy to do so. Of course, you can have a hybrid mix of all of the above as well. Users don't see anything but a folder structure. The admins, however, can sort of dedicate storage to different requirements. Complete feature set, everything you've read about with regards to ShareFIle, all available for files stored inside a storage zone. Second form of storage you can have is what we refer to as connectors. So connectors is quite niche, and what it allows you to do is to be able to connect to existing data repositories via the ShareFIle platform. It's almost a day one sort of service whereby you don't have to migrate all of your data into the platform. You can just set ShareFIle up, and within a day or so, you could introduce these benefits, being able to view, edit, share documents on any user device, almost on day one. Okay. For many users, this will actually suffice, negating the requirement for migrating oodles and oodles of data. So in order to set that up, in any ShareFIle on-premise storage zone, this is what you require. Now, as you can see, there aren't too many moving parts to this. It is quite a simple configuration to stand up. And people often remark at how easy it is. After I've given them a prerequisite guide, it just gets them to that point. And so what you see, everything's done on port 443. No exotic ports require opening on either end. The net scalers are optional, but very highly recommended in this deployment. Inside the DMZ, basically terminate connections, does a hash-based validation to ensure traffic is consistent. You can authenticate your sessions completely within the DMZ before they even enter the internal perimeter of the firewall. And they also load balance requests across what we call storage zone controllers. So storage zone controllers are very simple ASP.NET piece of software that lives on an IIS server. You can have as few or as many as you like, and that simply enables your access into these storage platforms inside the environment. Okay. So it's required for setting up an on-premise storage zone, and also required for setting up connectors. Not required if you're only interested in cloud storage. If that's your only game, then you don't need storage zone controllers. Cool. Right, moving on, talking about SAML. So starting off, the first form of authentication you can have inside ShareFIle is ShareFIle managed authentication. quite simple. User accounts are hashed and stored inside the database of your account. It's quite simple. You use your email address as your username, and the password is of your own choosing, and there is a password policy that applies to that, so that you can sort of specify how your end users go about creating and maintaining their passwords. What we're more interested in is SAML authentication. So there's nothing proprietary about the way in which we do authentication. We simply use SAML for authentication. And this means that no passwords are ever replicated across to the ShareFile control plane. The control plane, I might refer to this over and over, but that's essentially where the API lives and where the pretty front end is the application. Users will be identified by their email address. That will be a unique identifier within an organization. Now, one thing that catches people on first sort of glance when you're talking about ShareFile authentication is the difference between a user account and authentication. Right? There is a line of separation there. So SAML is used for authentication. However, you still require a user object inside the ShareFile platform for things such as being able to set folder access control and applying the licensing to the individual that's accessing the platform. Right? And I'll talk about how you go about provisioning users as we go through this process, and also about the different SAML authentication options. For those that might not be familiar with SAML, I guess the majority of them probably are, but I'll just go through this very simple sort of diagram, very simplified, and apply it to a ShareFile context. So in the first instance, what we have is a client here which requests an SSO login URL. Okay? It does that off the control plane. So the administrator will have already configured an SSO URL. This might be a link to an ADFS server, publicly facing ADFS server, or a NetScaler inside your environment, for example. And it sends, it discovers that there's a URL in place. And what it does is it sends it back to the client for them to do a redirection. So then the client is effectively going to a customer-owned piece of infrastructure for the purpose of authentication. The identity provider, the IDP, issues a challenge for authentication to the end user. The user is then authenticated and provided with a SAML response. Quite simple, right? It's simply an encrypted token, which they can then supply back to the control plane to prove their identity and their valid login credentials. At that very point, what we call an OAuth token is generated and sent back to the client for ongoing access to the platform. An OAuth token, once again, is standard. There's nothing proprietary about the way in which we do it. So very quickly, that is SAML. So as I mentioned, OAuth token is a long life token, so that the user does not have to go through the SAML authentication process repeatedly for every transaction against the ShareFile platform. It has a configurable lifetime. You can configure this inside the product. By default, it's set to never expire. So if you've got a mobile device, you authenticate for the first time, you don't need to continue to put your password in every time you use the ShareFile platform. Of course, you can secure it and mandate as an administrator that everybody needs to put in a PIN number or a touch ID, for example, to access the application ongoing. But the OAuth token basically ensures that there is a long life authenticated session available on that device. All of the ShareFile enterprise clients use OAuth tokens for long-life auth, and they can of course be immediately revoked if there is a requirement to do so. User comes in and says, "Oh, I left my laptop on the train," or I think it's one of the kids took the mobile. What you can do is you can immediately revoke it from the control panel inside ShareFile. Login page options, we've got a few different options here, and this has gone away. I mean, this is a bit of a legacy sort of slide that I've put together, but it's for people that have perhaps been using the ShareFile product longer. I've included this. So firstly, you have what's called a ShareFile login page. Pretty simple, put in your username and password, which will be your email address and your password, and you're logged into the platform using a ShareFile managed user account. Second option you have, and perhaps the least used, is a SAML authentication page. So this is exclusively for SAML authentication. So if I was to go to, for example, customer.sharefile.com, I would automatically be redirected to my ADFS server, for example. It would be the login page for your ADFS server, authenticate, and you're into the ShareFile platform. So that's one example there. Now this is perhaps the most popular and the one that we set up by default. And this is the split logon page. So the split logon page basically gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you the ability on the left-hand side to be able to click the button that says sign in with company credentials. Have you clicked on that, you go straight to the authentication page presented by your NetScaler or your ADFS server or Azure AD. And on the right-hand side, what you've got is the ability for people who still use a local ShareFile user account, a ShareFile managed user account, to put in their username and password the way they go. Okay? And so I'll pause on this for just a moment and go a little bit off course. There are two kinds of accounts you can have in ShareFile. One is what we refer to as an employee user account. That's a licensed user account with all the enterprise capability. The second form is what we refer to as a client user account. And that's a free account that your organization gets. And then it's typically used for partners or for customers or external organizations to your own. Someone with a different email address, for example, outside your organization. They are a free account. They're limited somewhat in what they can do, but they can still achieve quite a bit. They would be using this. They would be using the right side of the screen. The right side of that screen is the client user accounts. Obviously, they're not a member of your Active Directory, and as such, clicking in sign with company credentials will not work. Right? They use the username and password of their own choosing. So, choosing a SAML identity provider, which is right for me, I would pick one over another. So this is where I provide a little bit of insight here. And the first question I might ask you is, are you using ZMobile MDX wrapped version of the ShareFile app? If the answer to that is yes, your answer with regards to which SAML ID you use is quite simple. ZMobile Server. ZMobile Server has got this capability, it's quite effective in providing authentication, it's already there, may as well use it. It's also required for the authentication that is done for MDX wrapped plans. The second question I might have is, do you require a true SSO experience? One that basically negates the requirement for your end users to put in a username and password altogether. If that's the case, you might be looking at a solution such as ADFS or the NetScaler, which has got that capability. Another question, are you using Azure AD? Azure AD is extremely simple to set up as a SAML IDP for the ShareFile product. It takes all of 2 minutes and you're done. So if you're already using that, that might be the way that you lean, based on simplicity alone. And then finally, you're using a NetScaler. If you're using a NetScaler, NetScaler gives you some fantastic capability around how you perform your authentication against the product. It gives you a true SSO capability against not only the initial login, but also authentication to connect to resources as well. I'll talk about that as we go through. So the first example, ADFS. ADFS is very easy to configure. Especially if you already have a publicly facing ADFS server today, as many organizations do with the Office 365 proliferation. All you would have to do is set up a new relying party trust. Okay, we've got guides for all of this, and sorry, before I go on, I've got a heap of content in these slides, and I've done that for a reason. It's not to rehash them and just feed them to you as I go through, but it's also what I'm hoping to do is provide you this presentation as a reference point. So if you're looking to do authentication at any later point in the future, refer back to this. I've got all of the, I've got the perfect links that will take you there for configuration guides, how-tos, best practice, etc. So ADFS gives you a true SSO experience. End users don't have to put in a username and password on their domain joined device when they go to access the ShareFile platform. Main benefit of ADFS, and as I said, very, very easy to configure. Azure AD, once again, even simpler to configure. This is really not much to do. If you've already got it, this might be an option. ZMobile. So I mentioned earlier, if you're using an MDX wrapped version of the ShareFile app, so that's the secure app version of ShareFile, then this is what you would use for that authentication. To do so, you must define a delivery group. So pick a group in Active Directory, all the ShareFile users, for example. Any member of that group will be provisioned inside ShareFile and can be used for, can authenticate against the platform. It also supports two-factor authentication, and it's quite simple to set up in the first instance if all you're looking to do is provide authentication to MDX wrapped clients. Okay? All you need to do is just simply go to the ShareFile configuration section, put in a few details, your URL for the ShareFile platform, the user, an administrative user account, and you're done. That's it. However, if you want to go to the next level and perform authentication for non-MDX wrap clients, so that's for clients who are using the web browser, for example, to access the ShareFile platform, and you want their mobile server to authenticate them, there's a little bit of extra configuration that needs to be done on both the NetScaler side, well, predominantly the NetScaler side, but a little bit inside the ShareFile web interface. NetScaler, fantastic option. This is becoming my favorite option. So the NetScaler, you can utilize the AAA authentication capability if you've got a minimum of enterprise licensing on the NetScaler to perform your SAML-based authentication. There is a minimum build that is required for this, and we're going to skip that KCD part because I'm going to talk about that in the slide upcoming. Can I have multiple SAML IDPs? So this is a question that is more and more being asked of the last 12 months as the number of different SAML identity providers starts to increase, and there are a bit of overlap in terms of what they do. The SAML certificate is what links all of these different identity providers. So in this example here, what I've got is the X509 certificate. That's a configuration screen from inside the ShareFile web interface. That X509 certificate that you see there, that is the SAML certificate. And that is the common element between the different SAML identity providers that you use to link them all to each other. So this will, provided the SAML certificate that you're using in this area is common across the different identity providers, then yes, you can have multiple identity providers. Give me some examples of this. Firstly, at NetScaler, you create a cert with customized expiry date. Why that's important is because in ADFS, for example, ADFS uses a token signing certificate for SAML authentication. And if we look down there, you can see that the default expiration date is only a year out from creation. So that's not a configurable value. Okay, so out of the box, you're going to have to recreate this cert every year if you're going to use this solution. A bit of a pain in the butt, right? You can use the NetScaler to create a cert with a customized expiry date. You can very easily replace the token signing certificate with that. And if you were to share them across the both, right, you could potentially have ADFS server and NetScaler both acting as a common SAML identity provider for the platform. Inside Zen Mobile, quite simple, there is a SAML certificate area within configuration that you can go to, and that becomes the common server. You can also use, if you're using NetScaler AAA authentication, you can use that AAA certificate as for a common SAML certificate as well. Really a matter of personal preference. Okay, so why would you do this? Right? Here's an example of one. I have Zen Mobile MDX wrapped version of the ShareFile client. So I have a super secure client for all my mobile users across my organization. So I need the Zen Mobile server to respond to their authentication requests. However, what I also require is for the people that are using Windows-based desktops, for example, inside the domain, to be able to seamlessly authenticate for the sync client, and perhaps inside the web browser as well. Okay? The Zen Mobile server is not going to give you that capability. So what you could do, potentially, is use Zen Mobile server to authenticate requests for the mobile, secure mobile app, and also have an ADFS server as well. The ADFS server is going to give you that true SSO experience across your desktops inside the domain. And there is an article there that actually steps you through, and it is quite simple to follow. Another question we've received from some larger deployments is they've got multiple instances of Zen Mobile across their organization. It has popped up, and it's quite simple to configure this, right? You make sure that the SAML service you use is consistent across the different instances of Zen Mobile server across your organization. Use that cert as your X509 cert inside ShareFile, and there you go. You've got your common authentication element. Two-step and two-factor authentication, two different things inside ShareFile, and there's a bit of I thought I'd share the distinction between the two. So two-step authentication is just basically a native authentication capability that we use to extend the ShareFile platform. So it's built into the platform, and it uses either a text message or a voice call to verify the identity of the individual as the extra step. It is not available for trial accounts, so if you set up a ShareFile trial account and you want to see it in action during a trial, you won't get to do so. The feature is available to both client and employee user accounts. However, AD accounts, which is the majority of enterprise, it is not applicable for. Right? It is a potential shortfall of the product. That's what you have two-factor authentication for. But of course, you're going to have your own sort of robust methodology for doing that. It is supported across most desktops and iOS, Android clients. It's not enforceable account-wise. One of those things that is optional, and you can educate users on how to enable it, but certainly not something that is enforceable account-wise, unfortunately, at this point. I'll link on some more information there. And two-factor authentication, this is the important part. Two-factor authentication is what you want to do in an enterprise scenario. You don't want to do two-step. Two-step is more of an elementary level of security. With two-factor authentication, you've perhaps got your own two-factor authentication solution in place today, right? And with regards to ShareFile, it is transparent to the ShareFile platform. So if you're doing two-factor authentication via a NetScaler today, or via ADFS, it's supported in that regard. Okay, so you define your two-factor authentication in your IDP, and when the user is challenged for authentication, you challenge for that second factor of authentication at the very same time. And then once that's complete, the SAML token is passed in orderly fashion back to the ShareFile platform the user is authenticated. Okay, so if you've got your own two-factor solution, it's really down to what your IDP will support. Authentication to connectors. So up to this point, I've been talking about SAML authentication, and that gets you your initial login into the ShareFile application. However, there is an additional authentication prompt when you go to access connector-based resources. Okay, so connectors can be used for a very large array of different sort of data repositories. We've got connectors to Dropbox, for example. We've got connectors to OneDrive for Business, to SharePoint Online. The most common connectors, however, the ones that are perhaps most important to business is we've got connectors to network file shares and to SharePoint on-premise. Now these connectors will prompt the user for their AD-based credentials. Okay? It is a separate layer of authentication because you're accessing a separate system. Basically, we're creating a line of separation between the ShareFile control plane and between your own internal resources that you have today. Okay, so there is an additional prompt there. Quite basic, there's a 401 challenge that's issued either from a storage zone controller, or if you're using a NetScaler, a more secure solution is to have the NetScaler do as part of its AAA functionality. Once the user is authenticated, storage zone controller inside the environment will go ahead and sort of enumerate the folders and give that complete folder structure to the end users. Just a graphical sort of representation of what occurs at this level on the NetScaler. So there is a content switch, which is at the heart of the ShareFile configuration on the NetScaler. If you're going towards a storage zone, if you're going to store data inside a storage zone, you'll get the load balancing base over for that. However, if you're destined for a connected resource, then what you're going to do is you're going to hit the AAA policy that is invoked from that specific load balancing base server. You can have a copy of this, I promise.
I'm just going to take a picture of SIFs and then take this out to the
it's all terminology.
Just update the slide.
Update the slide, you're right. Web access.
Nobody has the page in here, otherwise. So I'll leave.
I'll blame it like this. So access to connectors is something that you can do via the web interface. So if you log into the ShareFile web interface, you can go to an area called connectors, and all in one place. You can see network file shares, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, the rest of it. You can see them all in one area. If you want to set this up on your account, there is no configuration required beyond what you've already done today if you're not using a NetScaler. If you are using a NetScaler, however, there is a configuration, and it is not done as part of the ShareFile configuration wizard. So that's quite important. I just thought I'd point that out and make sure that that was clear. That's one that catches people out. There is an additional manual configuration you have to do beyond the wizard to enable this. Okay, I'm just going to skip through this and move it a little bit quicker. So it does require a CORS enabled browser on the end users, from the end users level. And examples of this would be a Firefox browser or a Chrome browser out of the box. They're CORS enabled. For Internet Explorer, what you need to do is you need to, there is a single checkbox that needs to be modified and something that can be distributed by group policy. Okay, user provisioning. So just a quick overview on how this is done. I mentioned earlier, a user object is required inside the ShareFile platform in order to facilitate permissions and authentication. You've also, those are the attributes that will pull out of Active Directory. Okay? It is limited to that. It is the first name, last name, and email address. That's all we're interested in, and that's all that gets replicated across the platform. We also have the ability to be able to provision groups, and that takes group name and membership, and that information is then replicated across the ShareFile platform. Provisioning options, you can do this manually, and as you can imagine, if you've got a large Active Directory, it just wouldn't be appropriate. This is the preferred tool, the user management tool. It's a very, very easy to configure, lightweight client that you can install absolutely anywhere. It's rules-based, and you can go ahead and do your configuration that way. Zen Mobile is also another option, one that is perhaps less popular and one that I don't recommend, for the simple sake of, with the Zen Mobile option, you don't have the ability to be able to specify some of the advanced options around the creation of a user account, such as their designated storage zone for their personal area inside ShareFile. I do have a demo on this. I'm just going to show this very, very quickly. It's not particularly sexy demo. So this is an example of the user management tool up on the screen. What we have under rules is a bunch of rules that you can create to provision both user accounts and groups inside the ShareFile platform. A sync users rule is the one that you use to provision user accounts inside the ShareFile platform. And these are some of the options around what you can do that you wouldn't be able to do if you're using Zen Mobile to provision the user accounts. Okay, so it's things such as specifying AD integrated logon, specifying a designated storage zone for the personal folders area, the ability to create root folders, creating a personalized firebox for them. These are some of the good reasons why you should choose the UMT tool. So it is quite powerful in that regard. So how you do that is quite simple. You go to the users, tab, scroll through the OU structure, find your designated security group in Active Directory. Most commonly, people will create a group called ShareFile users. You populate that with your users, and then you can keep your management of users inside the ShareFile platform maintained via Active Directory. Right? So you don't have to maintain two separate management platforms for user accounts. Okay? Do everything inside Active Directory once you set up these rules inside the user management tool. To set up groups, very similar. You just go to the Groups tab, search for your group. So I can find a finance group in here, for example. And there we go. So I've got a finance group in Active Directory. There are all the members of it. And just by selecting this and add rule, you just have to hit yes on the next page, and you're done. Okay, so that group can then be used for the designation of connectors to the finance group of users inside Active Directory, for example. So I can create a connector to the finance share inside my organization and target it at the finance users from Active Directory. It makes it quite simple to create connectors. I can also create a finance shared folder inside a storage zone and apply permissions to this finance group in Active Directory. Okay. Very simple, but very, very powerful at the same time. Back to my presentation and try and fly through it just a little bit quicker. I know we've had a late start, but I do want to try and get through it quicker. SSO experience. Okay, so ADFS, I mentioned earlier, is one way of negating the requirement for usernames and passwords for domain-joined computers, users on domain-joined computers. ShareFile has the ability to use Kerberos. by the NetScaler via a AAA policy. So that will give you the ability to do a single sign-on with no username and password prompt as part of the SAML authentication for the ShareFile application as well. Great reason to use the NetScaler. Desktop clients utilize Internet Explorer or a browser-based pop-up rather for authentication. So basically, if you can SSO via a web browser, then you can SSO to the ShareFile client that you're looking to use. Demo. Cool. So here is where I hope the demo guides will smile on me because my environment is incredibly under-resourced and slow. And to prove it to you, I've left my title screens up. I've logged in using a new user account, so this is my first access into a new desktop, if you can imagine. And this is my sync client, right, my traditional sync client. And over here I have my configuration of my Outlook account. So I'm just going to hit finish on that and wait till the end of the presentation for that to finish. And then I'll just go through some of the option screens. Okay, I'm going to sync my personal folders, for example. Hit next, 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 finish. I could skip this as well by GPO designation, but I wanted to prove this was my absolute first login into this desktop. And so what will happen here is I'm now authenticated into the sync client. At no point was I prompted for username and password. So if I go into Windows Explorer, and here we go, ShareFile, that's my sync client, right? They're the files that I'm synchronizing. So that's worked without giving me the single authentication prompt. Also, what I see in here as well is the Drive Mapper client. So for those that aren't familiar with Drive Mapper and what that does, it maps it, an unofficial drive letter against all the repositories that you can access inside the ShareFile platform. So that's, that could be OneDrive for Business, that could be network file shares, that could be your folder structure inside ShareFile native storage. And I've got access to that via this SSO configuration without having to put in a single username and password up to this point. I'm going to go into a web browser because it looks like the Outlook is going to be way too slow. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's wrong. Okay, if I give that a few moments, that's going to log in. So I'm going to open up Google Chrome. I'm going to go into my ShareFile account just via a web browser to show how that works via a web browser. So far we've got 2 out of 2 clients that have authenticated without any further intervention or prompts for username and password. It wasn't buying when I said it was slow. So, there we go. I'm going to my ShareFile account. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we can see company employee sign-in. As soon as I click on this option,
That's my ShareFile.
that's it. Okay, we can see the redirection happen very quickly on the URL. And here we go, logged into the ShareFile account using SAML authentication, no username and password prompt. And then connectors. So I'll get to connectors and I'll show you that there is no prompt for authentication at this point where there typically would be. Right, so I can go into home drive, for example, and it is empty because this is absolutely a new user account that's never been used before. There we go. Access into connectors without authentication either. So the Outlook plugin in here, there is a plugin that fits into Outlook, and that will be authenticated inside here as well. So not necessarily an exciting demo that wows everybody, but that's not what you want. You don't want exciting inside an organization if you're an enterprise administrator with 1,000 users. What you want is simplicity. What you want is no authentication prompts. So how have I done all this? I've done this by using NetScaler with Coveros authentication with an NTLM fallback. Okay. Quite easy to set up. We've got configuration guides that will actually step you through the complete process, and you can do away with username and password prompts for end users. So I'm just going to get back to this and wrap it up pretty quickly. So that was what I was speaking about earlier. Okay, there is a configuration guide down there. That's for the SAML authentication component. I skipped ahead and I showed you SSO to connectors as well via the NetScaler. So the NetScaler is the only option that provides SSO capability ability for connector resources as well. And that's just a little bit around what needs to be done in order to configure this, but I'm going to skip that. If you get a copy of the presentation, then you'll have a copy of this for yourself, including the how-to guide on how to do that. SSO for connectors and the ShareFIle mobile app as well. If you want to do this, the only way to achieve this is via the secure MDX wrapped version of the ShareFIle app, which is distributable via Zen Mobile Server. Troubleshooting. I'll try and do this in 10 seconds if I can. SAML response will be your best friend for working out why SAML is not working, if it is not working. You can capture this just using a browser, the browser development tool, and you look for the SAML ACS there, pull out the data, and then throw it into a message decoder of some sort. And what you're looking for is the X509 certificate, and make sure it matches the SAML certificate that you're using as part of your deployment. You want to check and make sure that the email address is correct, because like I said, we use the email address as the unique identifier. And then finally, you just want to make sure that your login time fits into the window for authentication that you're given. And one of the most common errors that we see is with people that use a Zen mobile server, for example, that doesn't use MTP as its time source. Its time could be out and not matching against the client that's trying to authenticate anyone. I'm going to skip this. It's important. You can do a AAA debug on the Netscale to try and work out why authentication to connectors might be failing. I'll skip this. And the last thing, Zen Mobile Server. So if you've got users that are getting an authentication error, the first thing you probably want to do is log into the admin area. Okay, so there's a URL that you can use, and what you want to do is check their reconciliation status. Okay, so in this instance, red means good, green means bad. If it's green against the user, then you can go ahead and you can click on this, and if everything works well, they will become reconciled and it will move to red, and that user should then be able to authenticate. So I'm not going to dive into this because this is another 15-minute conversation, but essentially what happens is with old versions of Zen Mobile Server, there's a reconciliation process that occurs once every evening. So if you've got users that have been provisioned, they usually have to wait until that 2 a.m. window that reconciliation actually occurs, which allows them to then authenticate. With that, that's ShareFIle authentication.
Have you got any